Hello, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about Tuscarora verbs. This is going to be a series, so I want to make one for each different tense and aspect and the appropriate mood. So Tuscarora has, I should say, three different aspects. There's the punctual, there is the serial or the ongoing, and then there is the perfective. So some people may view those as tenses, but let's just view them as aspects, right? Perfective aspect. Because each of these aspects, these three aspects, they each of them have their own tenses that they use for each one. And some of them may use future, or like a modal verb, like a should, like utsi, which means should. And then there's some of them that have a past, but they all function a little bit differently from each aspect. So in this video, we're going to talk about the punctual specifically, because the punctual is, in my experience looking at this language, it's the most common. It is also it's also the easiest one to understand, and there's not the perfective is also pretty easy to understand as well because it's mostly just adjective stuff. But the punctual is the most used, and most things that happen are quick actions, and that's usually what the punctual deals with. So we're going to make different videos for each tense and aspect combination. But in this video, we're going to just talk about the generalities of the punctual aspect, and then we'll talk about what it has. But in this one, we're just going to focus on we're just going to do an introduction to the punctual. So I have a keyboard that I built into this website, which contains all of the Tuscarora stuff. Some of them might be duplicated, I'm sure, like this and this. But this has all of the letters that the language, any diacritics that the language needs. There may be a couple other ones like the O with the ogonek. I'm not sure how often that's used in everyday Tuscarora nowadays, but I don't know. There are different sets of sounds for different varieties. So the punctual, right? And I'm getting my note. I've written my own notes to try to understand this from Mattoon's grammar sketch, because this is the authoritative source of the grammar of the language. So the punctual generally refers to something that it's something of a limited duration, as Mattoon puts it. And this is going to happen in action using the punctual will happen quick, either quickly or it took place. It took place and it was done. This can also deal with hypotheticals. So we're talking like promising, or a what if scenario. And this is where the punctual indefinite would be used. And we can also use this in the past to refer to something that took place at like a particular time and it was done. And it was done. If this is an ongoing thing, like if you're talking in the past about this thing and it's something that's still going on today, or something that happened multiple times, then you're not going to use this. Okay. Not used for actions that happened multiple times. be talking about the serial as well later on. But these are the main notes, and within within a within a aspect an aspect you can also have you can also I'm going to say all aspects. If you have all aspects, then you can have any kind of mood. So this can be the inchoative, which is like something that's beginning, you know, inception of something. You know, you can have reversive, dative. You know, you can do causative. You can do others like the purposive, and even in intensifiers, etc. Because there's also the distributive, which is very common in Tuscarora. So there's the distributive, and then I'm going to also put the reversive here because it's also very common as well. So all aspects can work with any mood, right? And sometimes the moods can act like just as part of the verb itself. So like if you have like the verb for untie, the verb for untie contains, it's like tie reversive, right? So that is, you're reversing it, which means you're not tying it, you're untying it now. So that's what that would do. So now that we kind of have this understanding of what the punctual is, right? And like I said, we'll take care to understand the other types. Like, you know, whenever it's used in the future is really nothing to it. It's just future some that's going to happen and be done, right? I'm going to the festival today. The festival's going to be done at 3, and then that's it, right? It's not an ongoing festival where you might go to like Carnival in like Brazil, and that's going to be like a few days or a few weeks. That's going to be an ongoing serial verb, which is that's a serial aspect, which is a different. So in this punctual, right, some general rules that we have to consider, which deals more with specific points in time. So some things that we have to consider for this are that if the verb stem ends in a consonant or a consonant cluster, then this glottal stop that we see here, the glottal stop that would go at the end, would normally go at the end of the stem or the root or the clause. Or say the clause of the word phrase. It goes before, it goes, how do I say this? It goes after the last, vowel before the consonant cluster. So it goes after the last vowel before the consonant or its cluster. Okay, so the example given for this was we have the verb yer, and yer means to do, also to make, I'm pretty sure. And in the case where you're using the punctual, right, you would have you might do something like yer, yer, with the apply to the punctual would turn into yer. So now you would do yer, right? So you do yer. So the yer, you'd have yer, which would be converted over to yer. So you would see how this glottal stop is changing. And moving to before that last consonant there. Okay, so that's just a case. And another is if you have a long vowel, if you have like a long, there's a long vowel followed by a consonant. There's a long vowel followed by a consonant, then you completely drop, right? You completely drop the punctual. So that means that the glottal stop is going to disappear entirely. It's gone. Okay. So there's that. And the example, so we have reek, which is a verb, an example we can use. It's the easiest because it just has a long vowel followed by that. There's reek. There's also this as well, harat, that we can use because reek was in the example, so we can try different. So in this example, we can do harat. Okay, harat would typically, I assume we would say you might generally say rot. Well, I'm assuming you might have something like this, and then that would just become this. And this does seem confusing at first because this is along this. I don't think yer is actually a long vowel. Yeah, I think that's why this makes sense, because I think I put that in there because it does extend it right there, because you're putting the punctual there, so it makes more sense to put it right there. But in this case, hrot for counting is not. It doesn't. There's no long vowel in yer. There is one here. Okay, so in this one we would have hrot, right? Hrot, and then it would just become hrot. So if you're using the punctual hrot, then you don't have to do that. Say hrot to count. The example that we were given in the grammar was reek, which means to bite. So this would mean that reek with a glottal stop would then become reek without a glottal stop, essentially, in this. And we can probably find, do we have any other ones that we can use? A long vowel, runat. Yeah, runat might be a good one to use because you have a long vowel. It's the only other one I have in this list. So I have runat. Runat means to blow. And then this one, do runata, and then that same thing would, that same word, which has a long vowel, a long vowel plus a consonant, dropped. Okay, so we have 3 examples here of this rule applied. Okay, and if you can find any other verbs that have this, that have a vowel followed by a consonant, then you know that this rule would apply in that case. All right. Call this phonetic rules. Phonetic rules. And we would, and so these number 2 number rules, number 1. And then that. So we have 2 examples here of the punctual tense being used here. Let me just make sure, because there's a limited amount of time before this doesn't get, okay, cool. So we have our stuff. We have all of our rules here, and I gotta format this because the formatting is not the best on this text editor. All right. So that's it for the main rules. Now let's talk about the different tenses combined with these aspects, or combined with this aspect. So let's call this punctual aspect, an introduction to the punctual aspect. Okay, and we'll call this lesson 12.1, because verbs are kind of important in this language. It's probably the most important verb form. If you're working with an agglutinative language, then chances are the verbs are going to be the most important thing. So thank you all for watching this today. In the next video, we're going to talk about the punctual. We're going to talk about the punctual past. And we'll talk about the punctual indefinite in a different video. And then we'll talk about the punctual in the future. The punctual and the present, we could probably combine that with one of these tenses. There's not a lot to do, but I feel like every tense and punctual, every tense and aspect combination should be covered. I'm not going to worry about moods because we don't have enough examples yet for moods. Maybe in like lesson 50 or 60 we can talk about that. But right now, it would just be good to talk about these verbs, because once you understand how the punctual, the serial, and the perfective all work together in the Tuscarora language, you can talk about, you will be able to manipulate time and space in your speech. So you'll know how to make the future. In this case, you'll know if I want to do hypothetical, I can do this. If I want to do a future, I can do this. If I want to just talk about something that's going on, cool. If I want to make like an adjective, like the house is purple, I would use a different one. I would use the perfective for that. There's different things that you're going to use, right? So we're going to talk about the punctual, and then we'll do introductions for the serial aspect and for the perfective aspect, and then we'll talk about all the different tenses that they use in separate videos. All right. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys in the punctual present video.